Hi, I'm Elizabeth Cooper, your host for the Queer Body Love Speaker Series. And today I'm so excited to have Kali Hashiki speak with us about erotic sensuality, sexuality, and loving our bodies. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So the first question for everybody is, when do you personally feel alive, free, and grounded in your body?
Well, there were three things that I thought of when you say that. The first one is um, I feel most a lot. There's times I feel most in touch with my body, most free is when I'm singing and dancing to the Orishas, which is part of my spiritual tradition. If I'm out dancing in a club or a party or something, and sex.
Awesome. Cool. And for people who don't know your amazing work, can you share a little bit about what you do?
So I am an erotic empowerment guide, and what that means is that I help primarily queer, trans, intersex people of color and allied folk as well to access their erotic energy so that they can use it for transformative fuel.
Awesome. So excited to delve more into that. So, first question right away is, aren't the erotic, the sensual, and the sexual the same thing?
No, actually, they are not. So I think they get used a lot interchangeably in our society. Oftentimes, the erotic and the sensual get used sort of as a euphemism for the sexual, when people are sort of, trying not to be crude or what have you. But I believe that they are separate yet related. So I define the sensual as that which is pleasing to or stimulation of any of the senses. And that the sexual is anything that is pleasing to or stimulation of the genitals and or the erogenous zones with the goal of either communication, connection, or orgasm.
Mm-hmm.
And I define the erotic as that which is stimulation of or pleasing to the soul. And so how they are related is that I believe that the sexual and the sensual are the most direct and the most embodied routes to the soul. So I'm ultimately working with people around their, accessing their soul, but using the sensual and the sexual as the routes to get there.
Awesome. Can you give an example of how you would begin working with someone? So say if I came in and I was like, I feel disconnected from my body and all of these realms, like where would you start?
Well, it actually, I start off with a consultation. We have a complimentary consultation where I ask some questions before we start. So like generally no one shows up at my studio and we're just like, so what's up? So generally the first thing I almost always start with though is the breath, because the breath is both an anchor and a vehicle. So it's an anchor to keep us grounded, to keep us anchored in our body, specifically when we are having sensual or sexual experiences. A lot of times we're not actually in the body while that's happening. Stuff is happening to our body, but we are not in the body. So the breath helps to anchor folks in the body. And so the very first thing I do is I teach some breathwork techniques. And then oftentimes what happens next is we get into a certain state of consciousness through the breath. And then we do a body scan, checking each part of the body and giving voice to what is felt there. And then that sort of gives a direction of where we need to go.
Yeah, it seems like your guidance would be so important and helpful there in terms of, it can be scary to connect with our bodies, especially if there's been any sort of trauma, which a lot of people have some sort of trauma in their body. Yeah. How do you think, how is being connected to erotic energy related to radical self-love in your conception?
Well, I think it would be very difficult to love yourself if you're not connected with your erotic energy. Your erotic energy is the same as your life force, the same as your creative energy. And in order to really love yourself, I feel like you have to have access to that energy and be able to tap into it whenever you need to. The other thing that I think is important is I believe that all bodies are sacred. I believe that all bodies are sacred containers for a piece of the divine, which is infinite. And so in order people can talk and talk. Oh, yes, you're a child of God. I'm not Christian, but, using it shorthand. Oh, you're a child of God. You're a child of the divine. That makes you sacred. But you need to actually experience that for yourself. And that's one of the things that breath work can help. So once you are able to tap into your erotic energy and really experience the sensation of your own sacredness, your own reflection of the divinity, then it becomes very easy to love yourself. When you feel just how much of a treasure the entirety of your body is, once you have that experience for yourself, then it becomes much easier to love yourself.
Yeah, I'm hearing the importance of an embodied experience. Like, we can't necessarily think our way to that necessarily.
I do not believe you can think your way. I do not believe that you can think your way to self-love. I do not believe that, you can read yourself to self-love. I don't believe that listening to someone else, you can find your way to self-love. It's something that it's an experiential experience. It's an experience.
Yeah. What is that experience? What have you experienced or you seen your clients experience?
I think it gets, one of the things that I also believe is that all of that is very individualized. So, and also I don't want to, what they call leading the witness. I don't want to influence what anyone's personal experience might be. So that would be a difficult question to answer.
Well, even that is helpful, I think, for people to, in a society where so much is about the cookie cutter answer, or like, this is what it should look like. It's like, no, it's individualized.
It's very individualized. I know for me, there's a way of understanding that I am not my body, and yet we are, up until I take my last breath, we are entities working together. And so for me, sometimes it's about being able to sense the me that is housed in my body. And sometimes it's just about, it's about the sensation of moving and feeling my body in space and realizing that this machine, this container that I inhabit is kind of this miraculous, amazing thing. And how lucky do I get to be for this lifetime to be in this container?
Yeah, that leads to another topic of conversation, which is, why do you think traditional religions teach a separation between body and soul?
Oh gosh, you might have to rein me in on this. So, so I have a lot of feelings about this. So I believe that because we are all pieces of the divine, housed in this sacred container, that in order to converse with the divine, in order to meet the divine, in order to find out what your particular deity wants from you or believes in you, all you need to do is travel into your own soul. And like I said, the sexual and the sensual are the most direct routes that way. So if you have a direct conduit to your deity through your body, and I'm a priest, you don't need me. Where do I get my power over you? But if I can convince you that you are this divine being housed in this filthy piece of garbage, and it's bad, and you actually need me to interpret what the deity wants for you, then I get to have power over you. And then I get to have power over you, over, your family members, and my power increases and grows. And so I really believe that the basis of a lot of religions, not all religion, a lot of mainstream, the part that gets perpetuated most often, because there are mystical traditions in Christianity, there are mystical traditions in Islam, there are mystical traditions in Judaism. But I think that the mainstream part of those religions that get perpetuated is really about power for the priests, power for the priesthood, hierarchy, and control, ultimately.
So I'm sensing what I think the answer is this, but I'll just ask you. So what's the alternative, and why do you care about dismantling that conception?
So the alternative is to find your own route to your own deity.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's important, because I feel like when each of us has this experience for ourselves of understanding our bodies, our containers as sacred vessels, you are also put in touch with the fact that all bodies are sacred vessels. And when you understand, when you have a somatic or a bodily understanding that all other bodies are sacred, then it becomes difficult to oppress, harm, maim, go to war, let those bodies starve, let those bodies not have health care. Understanding that also the body, that the earth is a body, so then it becomes harder to then destroy nature. And so I think that, one way to get out of this this sort of trajectory that we're on of destroying each other and the planet is for folks to be able to tap in and to recognize that they and everyone around them are pieces of the divine.
I'm hearing such a call for the personal liberation is maybe a strong word, but finding freedom within yourself and connection to the divine can lead and be part of social change and really valuing all people.
I think of the work that I do as a form of political rebellion. I was a social justice organizer for many years. And so I don't see this work as a departure. The work that I do as a departure, I see it as connected.
Yeah.
I also see that being grounded in the erotic is important for those of us who are engaged in social justice work. It's a place of refuge. It's a place of inspiration. It's a place where we can be refueled. And I have been very influenced in my personal work, my professional work, and also in my political work by Audre Lorde's essay, The Uses of the Erotic as Power. And that's one of the first resources for me conceptualizing the erotic in the way that I do. And I read that, it came out in the 70s. And I think I read it in the early to mid 90s and maybe mid 90s. And it has had a profound effect on me. So, and she was a writer, she was a cultural worker, she was an activist, she was a social justice thinker, and she believed that the erotic was an important part of our liberation.
Yeah. Can you share, is there anything else about what she said or how that influenced you that you can share?
Oh, wow. So I'm a heavy into quotes. I reread the article, I reread the essay ever so often. And in some of my workshops, I actually, it's a prerequisite. You have to read that before coming to the workshop. So, but there are a lot of quotes of hers that really influenced me. And this one, I'm not going to be able to quote it exactly because also I'm not that... I'm not that beautiful of command of the language. So, but she talks about during rationing how you would get this block of margarine that was like white, and then it would have this little pellet of like a little pellet of yellow dye or whatever. And the idea was that before you used it, you would break open this pellet and then sort of massage it through the whole block of margarine in order to make it yellow. And she talks about, so she describes that, and then she says that the erotic for her is that pellet, that instead of remaining separate and isolated in a sexual context, that life is fuller when you can, massage it through or spread it through all aspects of your life. And that's what I try to do for myself personally, and that's what I try to do with my clients.
That's beautiful. I know that it's different for every individual, but maybe could you give a taste for people about what that could look like?
We could do you want to do some breath work?
Sure.
Okay. So you're sitting. And so what I'm going to have you do, I talk about buttholes a lot in my breath work, but I'm
sorry, I'm just going to pause you for just a second. So we're inviting everybody to like stop what you're doing and participate and do this.
Yes. So if you're sitting, you're going to grab your butt cheeks and you're going to pull your butt cheeks apart so that you're sitting on your sits bones, which those bones that are sort of like near where your butt meets your thigh. And if you're able to, you're going to put your feet flat on the floor. And if you are not able to, that's totally fine. And what you're going to do is be as relaxed as possible. And you're going to breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth. And first, you're going to check in with your jaw and see if it feels tight or clenched. And if it does, you're going to go around like that. And then you're going to bring your awareness to your butthole. And if your butthole is clenched, you're going to consciously unclench it. If you're not sure if it's clenched, because oftentimes we walk around with a really tight butthole, we don't know it. So if you're not sure if it's clenched, you're going to consciously clench it and then consciously unclench it. And then you're just going to breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth with a relaxed, gentle, easy breath. Inhaling, and the body expands in all directions when you inhale, so not just to the front, but to the sides and even towards the back. And then the body contracts a little bit on the exhale. And you want to feel the breath come down further than your chest. We're really good about breathing up here, but your lungs come down much further. So even your belly is expanding and your torso is expanding. And you're noticing where your feet are in contact with the floor. You're noticing where your butt cheeks are in contact with the chair, whatever you're sitting on. And you're just feeling yourself expand and contract and expand and contract. And so an inhale and exhale are one breath, and we're going to do 5 breaths, and then we're going to open our eyes and come back into the space around us. Hi there.
Hi.
That's just a little, usually we would do that breath for, like 10 minutes, but I didn't think we had that much time. And that's the beginning of bringing the attention into the body, bringing the attention into the pelvis, which is where our erotic energy, our creative energy, our life force, all of that lives. So.
Oh, beautiful. Even just a few minutes. I mean, it's pretty magical and powerful. So thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Oh, beautiful. I feel like I'm kind of like high now. Okay. I'm curious about how your various identities have played into the work that you do, how you approach your work.
So my various identities, so I'm Black, I'm a woman, I'm queer. And part of the reason that I feel that, and I say that this is a form of political rebellion is that so much of what we are told is supposed to be normal and what we're supposed to want actually doesn't work for the vast majority of people on the planet. And the things that we are told that we are as women, as people of color, as queer, are also not true for the majority of people on the planet. And so having to really work through who is my authentic self, and what does my authentic self authentically want, and trying to navigate through the messages that I've been told about who I am, and who I am, what I'm supposed to want, how I'm supposed to move through this world. Mm-hmm. Shaking off those shackles, breaking off those shackles is a political act. Not being confined, not letting myself be confined by what mainstream society tells me that I'm supposed to be. This very small box of who I'm supposed to be as a woman, what I'm supposed to want as a woman, mm-hmm. and this very inaccurate portrayal of who I am as a Black person, what I'm capable of as a Black person, and then what the depravity of who I'm supposed to be as someone who loves other women. All of which none of those things are true, but you get those messages, you're bombarded with those messages on the daily. And so, I think it's really, really important for queer folks, for women, for Black, Indigenous, and other people of color to be able to have an authentic understanding of themselves. And the only way, well, not the only way, but one of the ways to do that is by really checking in with your body and opening that conduit between you and the divine, so you can hear the truth of who you are and the potential of who you are, and how you are supposed to move in this world, how the divine wants you to move in this world, which is to be your authentic self. And your authentic self is magical and beautiful and full of love to give, and sexy and engaged, if that is something that is important to you, and fully able to experience and go after the sexual and sensual pleasure that I believe is your divine birthright, actually. So I'm not sure if I answered the question. Did I answer the question? It was kind of a long...
There's so many different ways it could go, but I think, just knowing that there's so many ideas that are coming from the mainstream that are trying to put us in these different boxes, and finding our authentic truth and birthright of pleasure is maybe what I'm hearing also, is like, yes. I haven't used that word, but
pleasure. And empowered people are dangerous to the status quo. And that there are ways, besides just telling us lies about ourselves, there are ways that the status quo, that society employs to keep us from being empowered, so that it's harder to fight against the injustice that exists. And part of that is telling us lies about ourselves. Part of that is making it so difficult to feed and house ourselves, so that we don't have time to notice that we aren't inhabiting our body. Part of that is telling us lies about other people, so that we're distracted by these other folks who are minding their own business, and then not paying attention to what the powers that be, the evil, because I do believe that that's evil, which is a rejection of the sacredness of yourself and the sacredness of others. That's what I think is. Mm-hmm. So,
how would you suggest somebody working, like, either with I'm hearing the rejection and the embrace. So it's like a rejection of certain things that aren't helpful, and then embracing our divine birthright of pleasure and our authentic expression, both in ourselves and other people? That's a big question. I guess I'm just curious if there's like, how would you advise somebody to start to deprogram and like reprogram themselves?
That is interesting. So I do think, okay, so, it's like, okay, you can't read yourself, you can't think yourself to self-love. But I do think that being exposed to the words and thought processes of others who are engaged in this, decolonization of the mind, decolonization of the spirit, I think it's important to have a way so that you can find reframes, right? That there's always there's messages that come through, and sometimes the first way to sort of break the hold it has over you is to figure out a way to reframe it, and sometimes that's not easy to do on your own. So being around communities that are also engaged in trying to deconstruct some of the harmful messages around sex, gender, sexuality, race, class, ableism, all of those things. It's very difficult to do, or it can be very difficult to do on your own. However, in the age of Google and the internet, it can be easier to find those resources than it ever was before, if you're in a place where you can't actually, if you're isolated for whatever reason and you can't meet people in the flesh. So I think, Googling things like self-love as a queer woman, and then seeing what comes up, or deconstructing sexism and seeing what comes up, and checking those things out, I think might be a good way to start. And I definitely feel like whatever tradition or work, or I don't even know what you want to call it, that you find that helps you to be still for a moment in your body is invaluable, because we're so busy all the time trying to just make ends meet, trying to just stay alive on this planet, that sometimes if we're going all the time and we don't have the space to be still, to inhabit and fully experience our body, then it becomes hard to find that route to the divine. It becomes hard to experience yourself as a sacred being. So stillness and finding ways to reframe some of the dominant paradigm messages.
Yeah. I'm hearing the importance of knowledge and experience, like marrying
knowledge and experience together. Yes.
Yeah, because you're talking about Audre Lorde earlier too, and how inspirational and helpful that was. I think it can be so helpful to have these powerful teachers and words to help us do those reframings, and then anchoring and inviting those in our bodies through things like the breath practice. And working with you would be one way. So you're offering
one way, definitely
35% off Skype sessions if they're Skype packages if they're scheduled in the next month. Can you share a little bit about what working with you would look like?
So I'm doing a Skype thing mostly because I feel like people all over the country and maybe even the world are tuning in.
Totally.
So while I primarily work with bodies that are in my presence, I also do work through Skype. So what it would involve would first be figuring out, what is your goal? What path is it that you are on? Are you on a path to become more embodied? Are you on a path to learn how to integrate your trauma so you can still thrive? Are you on a path of sexual empowerment where you're not sure what you want, or how to ask for what you want, or how to say no to what you don't want? So we figured that part out. And then we figure out, based on your bandwidth, based on your capacity with what else is going on in your life, what makes the most sense. Is it one Skype session a week? That's an hour? Is it 2 sessions a month that are 90 minutes? So we figure out what works for you. And then we meet on Skype. We do some breath work. We do some talking. And then there are exercises that I give you at home. And the work at home without me is just as important as the time we spend together, because that's when you start to integrate and hopefully pick up new habits that help you to experience yourself, your spirit, your body, your sexuality in a different way.
Totally. Awesome. Cool. Well, and like you talked about, it's so individualized, and it sounds like you're really willing and wanting to meet people wherever they're at in terms of
because everyone's in a different place, and everyone has a different path to walk, and everyone has a different way that it makes sense for them to walk their path. And my job is really to be that guide for them through the wilderness, because I've been to the mountaintop accidentally many times through my body, and finally left some breadcrumbs so I can help other folks get there too.
Yeah, awesome. Cool. Well, thank you so much. I'm curious if you have any words of wisdom, something to leave the audience with.
Something that I want people to leave with is that they are this precious jewel that's encased in a sacred, lovely, beautiful flesh package. That you cannot believe that, you don't wrap jewels in garbage. So your soul is this beautiful thing, and the package that was chosen to wrap it in is also this really beautiful thing. And I want folks to, however they get there, to be able to know deep within that their flesh is sacred and their pleasure is sacred, and they are all a reflection of the infinite beauty of the divine.
Beautiful words to leave us with. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.